Well, as you've been hearing, the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee has adopted an aggressive rate stance by hiking lending rates by 50 basis points. The decision will take the repo rate at which the Reserve Bank provides short-term money to local banks to 4.75%. Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago says that despite the hike, monetary policy in the country remains accommodative. Now, the bank also advised its growth forecast to 1.7% from 2%. Let's get a bit of reaction. We're now joined by South Africa's former Statistician-General, Dr. Pali Lehohla. Dr. Lehohla, always a pleasure. So nice to see you this morning.
Morning. That's waking me up too early to this depressing news.
Exactly.
Of a rate hike.
It is. It isn't the nicest news. It certainly isn't. And I know yesterday you were speaking at it was the Black Business Council meeting, a forum there, and it wasn't a pretty picture that's been painted about the economy of the country. And this was just another nail into the coffin that was added later on that afternoon. What are we going to do?
Well, I think the Reserve Bank is right in raising interest rates. I mean, they are up in Europe, and living in this global village, you cannot not raise interest rates given the situation, the oil prices, the food shortages. So we are really in a fix at this moment, and we are facing a cliff. Of course, all this happens because of all this happens while we have been very deliberate in being destructive as an economy. There are so many things. I mean, the rail is not functioning, the electricity is gone. Yesterday there was no water. So there are a number of things that are just going wrong. But of course, the Reserve Bank has to do what it has to do.
I totally do understand that. I mean, this is the environment we find ourselves in, and the world, as you say, is doing it. But when we look at ourselves, though, because, you know, you worry as an individual because we've lost so many jobs. So many jobs have become redundant and lost due to COVID and other issues that we've seen over the last few years. People are struggling to get by. The petrol price is skyrocketing. I mean, we're expecting over 3 Rand a litre increase next month. Electricity is not stable. We're paying the highest prices for that as well. And everything else. I mean, food costs have gone through the roof. Now, interest rates. I mean, just on a bond of R1 million, I think you're paying an extra 700 and something Rand on a R1 million bond. This is very, very hard for a nation already under stress. I mean, is there anything that we can do to assist the people of the country?
Yes, indeed. I think the policy framework that we have adopted is a difficult one. I've argued that the economic recovery and plan is not going to work. And added to that, now we have this hike in inflation. The way we are moving benefits business more than it benefits society, people, and labor. So we are at the point of no return. I think we have a precipice that we cannot avoid. So we have to get ready for the post-explosion. There is, or is it an implosion? Call it that. I'm afraid that this is the situation that we are headed for, and our policies are not very useful.
You also mentioned
as far as these issues are together.
Yeah, you mentioned yesterday during the Black Business Council meeting. I mean, one thing that you were very sort of vocal in saying. You were vocal in saying quite a few things, but one of them is that what you've basically kind of said that the president and some of his ministers are ignoring the calls from black business to drastically fight unemployment and poverty, saying that there was nothing in the State of the Nation address which actually dealt with the increasing numbers of unemployed in this country and how to improve this economy. Perhaps you want to expand a bit further on that.
Yes, I mean, whatever they've said in the economic recovery and reconstruction plan, it's not going to generate jobs. And by its own admission, the Treasury, its projections show that the unemployment by 2026 will be at about 37%. And they are correct. And the question is, does South Africa accept that? And when the president rises and the Minister of Finance rises and say, we are going to deliver to you so much unemployment, and Parliament applauds, and we as society also applauds, what kind of society are we? Have we run out of solutions? There are at least some solutions. Of course, the Russia-Ukraine crisis is not very helpful, but certainly we are going the wrong path. So the Black Business Council has to rise to the occasion and challenge the politics, because we are not challenging the politics. If we don't, then we will end up in this kind of rut. I also was there telling the parliamentarians, how do you hold the ruling party to account as the legislature on its plans? Because these plans are not going to deliver the right kind of growth, the right kind of employment, and reduce poverty.
One of the most...
when the governor of the Reserve Bank does what he has to do, things are going to look very ugly.
Yeah. You wrote an opinion piece not so long ago, I think it was just a couple of weeks ago, and something so powerful, a line that you opened up by saying, and I'll read it to South Africa if they haven't read it yet, and perhaps you can talk to us a little bit more about this. You're saying, to enlarge the cake rather than race to the bottom to fight over the crumbs should be our preoccupation. The continent is the space for growing the cake, provided we do so with an ethical ethos. I don't know, that line just gets to me.
I mean, if you look at the Asia tigers, they grew on the basis of being Asia. India, rather China, Korea, Malaysia, all those grew as a block. And our block is the continent. But of course, we don't seem to be liking the continent. In doing so, you see us being excluded from the 1,000-kilometer rail that is running through Botswana, Zimbabwe, into Mozambique. Those three countries met together. The AU at its summit had said South Africa may be preferred for rail construction. And in that export of coal and so on, they are sitting together and excluding this AU assigned country, because I think they have given up on us.
Yeah.
So we are failing to be a regional power and using that hegemony to be useful, because we can't even take care of our own rail. So this want to neglect to govern is what is giving us these crumbs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you express so well that, I mean, we know we're in a very difficult economic position. We do. The world is in a tough space. But I mean, there are solutions. And if we were genuine about this, and the leaders were genuine about correcting the country and looking inwardly to find solutions, and within the continent, what would you advise? I mean, how do we get out of this position that we're in right now? Is there no turning back, or is there a way to say, this is what we need to do and we need to do it now?
There will always be a solution. Even in Somalia, there will be a solution, for as long as the people rise and do the right things, and then we get the right leaders. At the moment, our leadership has taken us down a dark alley, and they've been fighting amongst themselves and forgot. Now we are seeing the precipice. So it is all about leadership. You get the right leader. Kagame was in a crisis in Rwanda, people dying, 1 million people dead, desperate situation, but 28 years later, they are in a different space. At that time, 28 years ago, we were celebratory, hopeful, and heading to a better future.
Yeah.
But we gambled it, and we are in the opposite position to what Rwanda is. And because our leadership has actually let us down, it's all about leadership.
It certainly is all about leadership, and that is something that's been, in a way, sorely missed, because if the right leadership was in place, they would see the opportunities, and there wouldn't be as much corruption, there wouldn't be as much self-gain and wealth, and trying to, as you put so powerfully, gather up the last of the crumbs to basically help themselves instead of taking them and baking another cake and making it a bigger and even better cake. But, I mean, is that really what it is? I mean, is it just leadership? Is there not more to it?
There could be more to it, but leadership is around economic policies that are appropriate and right. But for as long as our economic policies continue to sell the infrastructure, showing that government has failed. I mean, this infrastructure in other countries, and Masukatu advises the president, says it is not about the private sector being better, it is not about government, and it is about the infrastructure basically being built by government, and the private sector may actually benefit and public benefits from there, rather than selling off the assets that have to actually cater for the majority of the population, given where South Africa is. But we are busy selling. I mean, if you think about James Webb, the space shuttle that went into millions into space, that was governments cooperating and building a massive thing. No one private sector built that. So to imagine that the private sector can be the smart thing that can build things, no, they have a motive of profit. They don't have a motive of solving the problems of poverty and inequality. Perhaps if the employment benefits through that channel, it's by luck, by chance, and not by design. So we have to have central to the mission of government, it's actually solving poverty and unemployment, because there will always be the poor. But if government ignores its infrastructure, that helps the poor and parcels it out to the private sector, hoping that the private sector, it's the wrong approach. It doesn't mean that the private sector has to come in, but government has to be regulatory and exceedingly developmental in its approach. At the moment, it is only regulator and then administering the crumbs.
Oh, Doctor, I wish I could continue speaking to you. You are always a wealth of knowledge, and we thank you so much. And yeah, former Statistician-General Dr. Pali Lehohla painting a real picture and basically appraising the state of the South African economy following that repo rate increase by the Reserve Bank and what needs to be done to reverse this situation we find ourselves in economically.